Thank you for listening to the Following Films podcast. Today I'm joined by Erik Messerschmidt to discuss his Emmy-nominated work on Bono, Stories of Surrender. Stories of Surrender is a vivid reimagining of Bono's critically acclaimed one-man stage show, Stories of Surrender, an evening of words, music, and some mischief. As he pulls back the curtain on a remarkable life, and the family, friends, and faith that have challenged and sustained him, he also reveals personal stories about his journey as a son, father, husband, activist, and rock star. Along with never-before-seen exclusive footage from the tour, the film features Bono performing many of the iconic U2 songs that have shaped his life and legacy. Today's episode of the Following Films podcast is brought to you by Universal Pictures' How to Train Your Dragon. The film is currently available on digital, DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K UHD. If you'd like to win a free copy of the 4K disc, just send me an email with your mailing address to editor@followingfilms.com with the subject line, I Can Train Your Dragon. Winners will be selected at random and receive notification by August 31st. If you're in the Tucson area or planning a trip to Southern Arizona at the end of August, come join me at this year's Tucson Comic-Con. I'll be moderating a panel with Mike Jarrett and Tad Sully to talk about their work on Going Postal, The Legacy Foretold. We'll have a screening of the film, a Q&A with the filmmakers, and some fun giveaways. I'm really excited for this one. Catch us on Friday, August 29th at 3 p.m. in Panel Room 105. You can purchase tickets for the event online, and if you check the show notes to the show, you'll find a direct link. Now on to my conversation with Erik. Bono, Stories of Surrender is currently streaming on Apple TV+. I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning, Erik. How are you today?
Hi, Chris. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday to do this, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, thanks for being flexible with the time. I appreciate that very much.
Well, it was kind of nice. Gave me a little bit of chance to. The last time I talked to you was right before Devotion came out, and you've been pretty busy since then. And I've seen some, but I got to revisit some of the stuff that you had been foreshadowing that was coming down the pike. But man, you've had an exciting couple of years. How are you feeling these days?
I'm great. I'm really good. My wife and I had a baby girl, and our
that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. So we've been busy with that, and been working all over the world. It's been crazy, and just trying to do my thing. Mostly.
How old's the baby girl at this point?
She's 10 months now. Yeah.
Oh, you're just in the thick of it right now. So how do you balance that? Because I have two kids, and going back to that time period, me and my wife were actually just talking about this the other day, that there's just not enough hours in the day, and you're constantly exhausted and trying to balance work and being a parent and being available and all that. How are you finding it so far?
Well, I'm really fortunate. I have an incredible partner, and she understands, better than anyone that, the reality of our life together and what it is I do for a living, and the demands of that. And also I think, the thing that you immediately learn when you become a parent is just how much free time you had prior and how poorly you used it,
For sure.
So it's made me a more efficient human, I think, in terms of choosing where to spend my time and where to use my time, and how much leisure I can afford in my life now. No, we just try to get through the day and do it with humor and humility as best as we can.
You could not be more right. There's nothing more humbling than being a parent for me personally. So, and especially once you start hearing their opinions, it's amazing. It's so wonderful to have somebody that'll just 100% not be impressed by your bullshit. It's the thing that we need more. I thought that my wife had that, but having kids, it's that tenfold. So it's just incredible.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think she definitely will be. She will be an opinionated. No, knowing my wife and I, I'm sure that the apple won't fall that far from the tree in that regard, and she will be an opinionated person. So, which is good, which is something I certainly support. So we'll see. But,
absolutely. But to sorry for the digression there. Just to
No problem.
there's one thing in specific prior to the Bono show that I wanted to talk about real quick. There's a moment in Ferrari that I always go back to because I did love the movie.
Thank you.
I'm it's this moment that it's when you have you have Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz, her characters, they're both crying in the mausoleum, and it's back to back those two moments. But when you hold on her and she goes through that whole cycle of laughing and breaking down eventually, it is, to me, the movie has all this like real muscular filmmaking around the driving sequences and all that stuff. But to me, that is the moment when I think of that movie that I remember probably more than anything else.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful moment. Thank you. Yeah, I mean Penelope, I think is maybe the most impressive actor I've had the pleasure of photographing and being around and watching somebody work, particularly in her ability to transition into a moment and her ability to control her emotions. Because she can laugh and tell jokes and right up until the moment you roll the camera, and then she can transition and shift in. It's pretty extraordinary to watch. That particular moment, that's the actual Ferrari mausoleum in Modena where Enzo is buried.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's not a set. That's the actual space, which Michael was able to secure, which is kind of an extraordinary location, really. And as a result, I think it exudes a certain emotional response that you can't get in a set made out of plaster, fake walls, etc. And yeah, we just held on it, and I think that was something that I don't know the specific notes and the specific conversation Michael had with her before we shot that take, but we did 2 or 3 takes, and it was clear that was the one.
It's so incredible. It's one of those. It's very strange for the movie that is a car movie, but that's the thing that always stands out when I think about that movie. It's that singular moment that and it's one of the things that always resonate with me about his movies, about Mann's movies, is that they're always so deeply rooted in humanity. All of them, every one of them. It's that you could really boil them down to their almost like a black box play to some degree, that it really is just characters interacting with each other, despite how big and bombastic that they can get at times. But he's just really a humanist to me in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. No, 100%, and I think he's, when it comes to directing actors and giving notes, he's certainly one of the best I've ever seen, particularly in his ability to read a moment and redirect a moment or encourage something, with a performer. I think it's, he's one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
And then you go from that, and then you work with Fincher, then you work with Ridley Scott, and you've just been kind of like, I'm a few years older than you, but I think we're in the relatively the same neighborhood. It's like these were, at some point in time, these were all my favorite filmmakers when I was a kid. Do you have that pinch yourself moment when you're working with these sort of gods of directing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed with incredible opportunities lately, in particular, but really my entire career. I like working with directors that have an established sensibility, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I like working with a director, and I like working with different types of directors. These are all, all 3 of those guys in particular, are obviously legendary and have made some of my favorite movies, all of them. But they, their technique, their methodology, their way of seeing the world is, they're all vastly different. And that's sort of like the most exciting thing, I think, when it comes to being a cinematographer, is coming into someone's world. And, it's something you don't necessarily get with an emerging filmmaker or a young filmmaker that's still trying to define their world. Which is also a beautiful thing and an interesting, lovely journey to go on with somebody. But, for me, certainly in the last few years, as I've grown and I've sort of, tried to find my own viewpoint, coming in and working with someone that says, no, I like this, I don't like that, this works for me, this doesn't, has kind of solidified things for me in understanding how I want to interact with people, and the types of directors I want to work with, and it's helped refine my technique, so I'm a fan of all of them, for sure, and I mean, I think that's the most important thing when you go into a creative endeavor with someone. You want to like their work,
Yeah.
and you want to respect their work, which I certainly do. I don't work with directors ever whose work I don't respect. That's sort of my first rule. Yeah, I mean, I think that the process of going down the road with someone, and someone, directing is, I think, a very lonely profession. Actually, it's an incredibly revealing profession. It's one of the most difficult. And making a movie is extremely difficult. Making a good movie anyway, and
making a bad movie can be really hard too, though.
It can be, yeah. Certainly, people make it hard, yeah. But no, it's when someone lets you into their world and they allow you to participate. That is one of the most generous things you can do. I think, as a creative person, you say, come down on this journey with me. And then, I think when someone allows you to participate in their creative journey, you have a responsibility to do it 110%, which I certainly try to do always. So I don't get caught up in the oh my God, I'm working with Ridley Scott aspect of it at all, because because that would be a distraction from my responsibilities as his partner, So, I mean, it's certainly exciting, and you go into that process of being like, okay, this is really exciting and everything. But ultimately, when you're standing there on the set, you're trying to figure out how to stage a scene, or where to put the camera, or, how you're going to light something, or whatever. You're just doing the work, and that's the job, really.
Well, when you're exposed for those hours, I assume that just goes away because you have to do the job. That sense of probably before you even show up, the prep work that you've done just to get there on day one, that has to go away. For me, it seems like anybody that was established when I was in high school, that age and before, those are the people that I have a more difficult time. Anybody that seems like that more of a contemporary, even though we're not peers, it feels like that to some degree when I'm
Sure.
around those people. It makes it a little bit simpler.
Sure.
But when you get in the thick of it, it just goes away.
Yeah, I mean, filmmaking is in the Werner Herzog perspective is war. You're constantly reminded of the things you made commitments to in the prep that you no longer can do when you make a film. What do you mean I can't put that light there? What do you mean the actor didn't show up on time? What do it's just a constant sort of evolution of plans, all good intentions sort of dissolving in front of you, regardless of how efficient you are in the prep, unfortunately, I think in modern filmmaking anyway. And it's a complex ecosystem, the film set, and it's the shorthand that you develop in the prep in terms of figuring out how you and the director and the production designer and the costume designer see the film together, is the most important thing, I think. There's a logistical part of it of this is where we're going to park everything, and this is where we're going to these are the lenses we're going to use, et cetera. And that's all important parts of the process. But ultimately, it's like you're trying to, I see my job anyway of like going through the world and sort of trying to extract from the director how they're going to react to a given image or emotion or scene or structured idea or whatever, or how frenetic and spontaneous they want to work, how precise they want to be, et cetera. It's like there's no right way or wrong way to make a movie. There's just many, many different perspectives and approaches, and they all yield different results. Someone, Michael or Ridley and David, they all work or Andrew Dominic for that matter. They all work in completely different ways, and they all have, they react to things in a different way, but all of them have exceptional taste, and that is sort of the one thing that is consistent. And certainly the directors I try to find and seek out and am attracted to are people who have exceptional taste, and they understand the things that they react to, and they create an environment that will amplify or yield the things that they react to positively.
Yeah, of course. And then in that vein of figuring out how they're gonna react to it, something like Stories of Surrender is such a wonderfully unusual way to present this material. It has a live audience, but it feels like there's no one there at times, and it feels like it is just impressionistic at times while capturing a live performance. And it's something that I think you're playing in the same neighborhood as Stop Making Sense as far as the quality, and while wildly different in the execution, but something that is so unique visually that it feels like something that's beyond just capturing a live performance, and it feels so damn thoughtful. So could you talk a little bit about what went into this, and this very clearly almost impressionistic style that this has?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I mean, it's the movie. The movie is really an intimate portrait, I think, of Bono, and he's revealing a lot to the world about himself and his relationship with his father, and how his relationship to fame, and how that affects his ability to do the things that he thinks are important for the world, and also how it affects his ability to do things that are important for him and his family, etc. So it's quite an emotional and introspective piece, I think. And the stage show is as well. Andrew and I and Bono wanted to explore the sort of loneliness of being on stage, and the isolated thing of, you're performing for an audience, and the audience is there, and you're on stage, but it's quite that process in of itself, I think, is quite a lonely and quite a kind of difficult place to be sometimes, and if you put the camera far away, which you're forced to if you shoot like a traditional concert film,
right?
I don't believe you capture that in the same way. I don't believe that you can get that kind of emotive, subtle, the subtlety of someone talking about themselves is very difficult to capture when the camera is in the 15th row. And that's sort of the one thing about cinema, which I think makes it unique and really special, is the fact that you can take the audience and you can bring them into the close-up, and you can make a distinct choice of when you're gonna show the audience someone's eyes, and so we were playing with that combination of bringing the camera really close to Bono and putting it in his face. And the cameras, these are not long lenses; these are wide lenses that are, many times the camera's 20, 30 inches away from him, or even closer, and so that the audience can feel connected, and that, in the moments that we thought were important. And then in the moments where it's like, you remind the viewer that, oh, there is an audience here, he is playing to a room, we pull back. And so that, that was a constant conversation. And of course that changes the way you make the movie. It changes the way you have to structure it. We didn't have an audience in the theater the whole time. The whole thing was shot in the theater.
Right.
But we didn't have an audience the whole time because in some cases we didn't need it, or we wanted to explore the idea of that performance being very quiet, for example, or,
that was something I was curious about, because the sound will drop out and the audience will drop out, and you'll go to these moments that he has the swagger or stage presence. I don't know how to put it, but where it feels like he's performing, but because he's in a room, a literal blackness by himself, where it's just him in this black and white image, it feels unsettling at times to some degree because of how raw it is. It feels like it's performative, but it's like there's this arm's length distance in the beginning of it that starts to break down as you go through it, and you get more and more. I feel like the wall disappears as you get through it, and that's some of that is just getting used to the style. But I think that there's a element of just accepting the story and the way that it's being told, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, obviously this is my opinion, but I think that anyone that writes a book about their life, there's a cathartic element to it. This is someone getting something off their chest. They want to talk about, I think in this case, Bono's talking about how he became who he is, and the things that changed his life, and the things that are important to him. I think that the for a performer, for an artist, for a celebrity, for a rock star, there is no better place than the stage to express, who you are. But I liked the idea personally, and Andrew and I talked about it a lot of saying, look, let's take everything, all the distractions away from the audience. Like, let's really minimize what the audience looks at, so that the only choice they have is to look at Bono. There's nothing else in the frame to look at, because there's it's like that sort of distilling something into what is really important. And what's really important is, the kind of spoken word element of, this is my story, guys. I think was an interesting thing to explore, for us, because typically, you're like lighting the background and you're trying to find a nice, elegant background that balances the frame. And, it's like, this movie it's not about the theater until it is, it's not about the audience until it is. It's like, we're very much playing with point of view and saying, no, hey guys, look over here. Look at his face, look at his body. Now he's moving his body. Now he's performing, it's like the structure of it is intentional in that way, and the lighting and the black and white aspect of sort of all of that was really intended to support that idea. I think
it does
make sense.
It makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And that was one of the things that grabbed me right away, was the way that the audience was lit, that they're almost in silhouette at times, where you can't really make out the faces, and it's a concept of an audience instead of the reality of the audience, where it feels like there is just this, it's kept very low in the background. It's something that the roar of the crowd is not omnipresent throughout this, and that you don't really see them. You're aware that they're there, and you're aware that this is a performance, but it does have that feeling of this slight digression. But one note that I got when I was writing, the best note I think I ever got was, stop writing like that somebody's going to read this one day.
Right.
And so it's that thing where it's almost goes through that, where it cycles back and things start to feel very raw and vulnerable. And in this voice, where it feels like this is his perception of the audience. It just, sometimes it's just him by himself, and other times he's kind of enveloped by it and surrounded by it.
Sure. Yeah. I think the audience as a metaphor is certainly a part of the movie, part of his story. The audience. There's absolutely examples, enormous examples in his work, I think, that are very much about connecting to an audience. And you see it in the call response. You see it in the playful thing of like, okay, now we're gonna sing this together, or I'm gonna, I need to feel you responding to what I'm doing. And that's, I think, something that in my experience is very important to people who perform on stage, obviously. But then there's the kind of more global, from 30,000 feet aspect to celebrity and aspect to performance, and I have to do, Bono has to do that for himself. I think there's an element, my opinion, or my where I see it sort of is that there was, this is him doing this because this is him talking about his father, and this is the way he knows how he can do it. This is his way of expressing himself, and so then the audience in that way is it play a different role, I think, in the movie anyway, which was something we wanted to play with. Like you have to tell me if it worked or not. That's certainly something we were exploring. Yeah.
Yeah. No. It absolutely does work. This is something that when my wife walked in, when I was watching this, it took her a second, and she was like, "What is this?" She didn't understand kind of the presentation. She'd missed the first couple minutes of it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really like U2. Just a band that doesn't work for her. It's one of those points that we diverge from each other, where I'm a big fan and she doesn't really care for them. And
sure.
When she heard him singing, though, she was like, "He has a beautiful voice." It's like, well, yeah. Give it and listen to it for a moment and kind of hear his story. And she was taken aback the moment when he talks about needing to impress his father. And that's what all this has been. This whole journey has just been trying to get in the good graces of it. And it's really early on, but I think that context of where you open in the blackness and just him performing before you realize there's a crowd there is so important for this. The way you open this is such a striking way to start a film that I wasn't expecting. I'm wondering, though, that's how he's expressing himself. How much and how if you do express yourself through the art that you're making? Because you're executing a director's vision, you're executing a writer, you're capturing an actor. Where do you see your self-expression through the art you make?
That's a great question. I think that I don't strive for, the creative endeavor or art making or whatever you want to call it, photography is it's not a therapeutic process for me.
Okay.
It's not, it's certainly not where I find solace or where I find, it's not that's not really what it's about for me. I think that, and I think maybe it's because it's not a solo endeavor, like cinematography or filmmaking in general is, people say collaborative. I don't really like that word, because I think that's, that suggests something that is not always the case. And it applies importance. I mean, I'm someone who feels very strongly that the director, is the one responsible for the film.
Sure.
They have the most, they have that it is a director's medium, and it should be, is my opinion, and, you'll hire someone like me to come and help you make your movie. That is something that like I said earlier, something I really, treasure. Yeah. And I see it as an enormous responsibility. And so, in terms of my own contributions, hopefully someone has seen my work, or they've had a meeting with me, and we see that we connect, or we see the world in a similar way. And because I can't light up close up, like every cinematographer, I just have certain techniques and certain things that, I think look good, and things I think don't look good. And, I'm not the right person for everybody for that reason, but I like to think I'm pretty versatile, but I'm not, I'm the happiest when we walk away and the director says, "Man, that's what I was going for."
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't need to be, "Oh, that's what I was going for." What I'm going for is trying to make, help them make their film, really, but I do have strong opinions, and I have sensibility around, this is how I think we should approach this, or this is how I think we should do it, and in the case with Andrew, Andrew and I have very similar tastes, I think.
Okay.
And sometimes they're in conflict, and which is healthy. That's the process of, that's the creative process as well, of saying, "No, let's do it this way. No, I hate that, man. What the fuck are you talking about? Put the camera over there. Okay, cool. Let's put the camera over here," and then there's the discovery part of that of, when you're in a creative relationship like that with somebody, and you have a strong opinion, and then, but in my case anyway, it's like, I just, no, let's put the camera here. And someone says, no, 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 it's over here. The shot is over here. And you go, and then you discover that they're right.
Yeah.
There's like, that is creative growth, and that is like a wonderful thing. And so I love that process of like, of trust that you developed with somebody.
Did you learn that, or have you applied that to being married as well? Because that feels, I'm not even kidding. Because that's like, I'm 16 years deep at this point, and that was something that took me a little while for both of us to uncover. It's, you talk about like somebody that has a really strong opinion about something. It's like, I disagree, but it actually doesn't mean that much to me. So let's go look. Oh yeah, no, they were right. And so you can see.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please jump in.
I think a friend of mine has a joke that says the most common workplace injury on a film set is bruised ego. And
it's good.
And I think that's so true. And it's like, and I think it's true. It's certainly true in my personal life as well, like recognizing that, you're in this together, and we're trying to navigate life together. We're trying to navigate the world together. And, I think that the film set is kind of a lovely microcosm of emotions, and because it's performative. It's about, in many cases, it's about bravado. It's about humility. You're sort of constantly in this maelstrom of complicated interpersonal struggle, often with minimal sleep, but which is a little bit like parenting. But sure. I think like, I think that for me, it's certainly been an exploration of trying to be a generous collaborator. There I'm using the word I don't like, but trying to be someone who is willing to be wrong, and is willing to go down the road with somebody, go on their creative journey.
Well, at the end of the day, if being wrong makes you look better, that's a wonderful thing. You'll still be open, the type of person that learns that your idea might not always be the best one, but there's sometimes you have to learn when this is something that's worth fighting for. This is the battle that's worth having.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the best idea should win and needs to win. And I think that's how good movies get made. Nobody walks out of the theater and says, at least they broke for lunch on time. Nobody walks out of the theater and says, with the context of the conversations that happen on the set, and nobody has a play-by-play of whose ideas won and who, the only thing that exists at the end is the movie.
Absolutely.
So in that way, ego is sort of completely irrelevant and really destructive, I think. So it's, and it's, it takes, you're told in art school, and you're told that it's about the ideas. It's about having ideas. It's about coming to the table with ideas, and it is. But it's also very much about I think generosity and humility more than anything.
That's really I think the ultimate goal of life is to get the fuck out of your own way and be humbled. We have such strong egos that are usually just masking for insecurity. And then as you age and have more experience and get more calloused and more bruised, you get more comfortable with yourself, and the ego slowly subsides. And hopefully it's not driving more than 50% of your decisions by the time you're an adult. But
I think, my work, everything that's been done with love has been better. So anyway,
I know we're at time right now, but I just wanted to say congratulations on the Emmy nod. This is a hell of a film. I think this is something that I didn't know that I needed, but I really did need to hang out with Bono for an afternoon. So I had a great time with this, man.
Thank you.
Last question though is, what was the last great thing you saw? Is there anything you've seen recently that kind of blew you away?
There's this movie that that is about bullfighting in Spain. My wife is Spanish, and we live, in Spain about half the year.
Okay.
And it's a documentary that Sarah made. That is, it's, I can't remember what the Spanish title is, but it's. I saw it at the San Sebastian Film Festival last September, and I can't get it out of my mind. And it's really, it's kind of a very quiet movie about the brutality of bullfighting.
Oh wow!
And it's and it's that is the one movie that I've seen recently that has kind of left a lasting scar, and made me really think about life, and made me think about filmmaking and its ability to make you think. So I recommend that movie. I can't remember the title.
I'll be able to figure that. I'll be able to figure that one out. I'll put it in the show notes for it. Recommendation.
So I think that's something everyone should see. It's a difficult movie to watch, but
I'm one of those people that sometimes the most difficult things are the ones that are worth watching. Honestly, I need a little bit of a variety. I don't want everything to be an existential crisis or a challenge, but the movies I appreciate the most are the ones that make me think I might be wrong about something. And I love being proved wrong. So
yeah. Movies, hopefully if we do it right, they last forever. And so, they should be made with that intention in mind, I think.
Well, you've got a couple that are already there, man. So you've got several that are, that I go back to on a regular basis. So congratulations again on the nod. And I'm hopefully get to talk to you in a couple years on the next one, because it's been, you're having a hell of a ride, man.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All
Thanks,
right.
man.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Time enough to figure you out. Time enough to write this down. Wish me luck, give me hope. So My voice cracked.